Hello everyone, this is CJNovo992 and today we're back for another brand new video. And not only are we back with that brand new video, but we're also back with the old preview videos as we have a team, a game and a matchup that we need to break down that could have not only massive knock-on effects to the weekend, that could obviously have severe consequences for our manager and the future of this team and who's going to be leading it, but weirdly, almost like it's fate, so does the opposition, as well as Ange Postecoglou brings his Spurs side up the same side he left Celtic for. He's coming up the road to Ibrox, needing a result, the Mora, and needing a result at the weekend to keep his arse in a job as well. It's a very, very interesting game and an interesting situation we are going to discuss. So strap yourselves in, hit that like button, subscribe if you are new around here, because we're here to talk about Rangers, Spurs, Clement, Ange, and what is a massive week for both clubs. And you know, I think that intro paints enough of the importance of this upcoming fixture that we can just dive right in to the oppositional preview. And that's what we're going to go ahead and do and have a look at, again, the familiar foe Ange Postecoglou, who at my current time of recording has his Spurs side sitting 11th in English football, and more importantly for us, 9th in the Europa League table with the exact same amount of points as us, just 2 goals off us in terms of the league positioning. But as always, we're not just going to dive right into European football and break that down, as that won't tell us exactly what type of challenge we're facing. We really like to peek under the rug. We like to try and find every nook and cranny so everyone leaves today's video knowing a little bit more about the opposition. And again, as we mentioned, there is a hell of a lot to break down. So before we talk about Europa League football, let's look at league football, as this helps explains where this Spurs is, who this Spurs side is, and why Ange Postecoglou is under fire right now. As we mentioned, they are sitting 11th in English football, which is obviously not where they want to be. But if you look at their league form, it's even worse over the last 5 matches, as they have actually won less matches over the last 5 games than second bottom of the league Wolves, who against managers under threat and constantly speculated to get fired. They're being caught up in sack or win games, sack or win games. They've won less matches than Wolves during that run. Now, you could make an argument that yes, they've also got the exact same league form over the last 5 games of Man City, which is so damn impressive, but you also remember, not only is Man City pretty guff right now, but also they have the exact same league form as third bottom Ipswich, who ironically's one win in their last 5 matches was against Spurs, as Spurs handed them their first win in the top flight of English football this season. Now, putting all my cards on the table, anyone who watched this channel for numerous years knows that I actually quite like to look at the Spurs side. You could argue they are my English side, if you will. I wouldn't say I support them, because again, I feel like you can only truly support one club, and I love Rangers, and that's where I absorb every bit of my energy. But I do like to look out for the fixtures. I like Spurs and how they're getting on, and the way that's came down, ladies and gentlemen, blame my father, who, because I like Gaza and because obviously I'm a Rangers fan, bought me a Spurs top with Gaza on the back one time, and that's just seemingly a team that I've looked out for ever since. So I do know a wee bit more about this team than maybe necessary, as I do again keep an eye on them now and again. I have got a couple of other players in my fantasy team in terms of James Maddison and Son. Hopefully both of them have howlers. So I am obviously going to be speaking about a lot of things in today's video, but I just wanted to put my cards on the table, because some people say, don't you like Spurs? Yeah, I like Spurs, but I love Rangers, and I hope to scant them 5-0. But whether you like Spurs or not, we're here to learn more about the squad and the challenge that we actually face. What is it about the squad? Why are they where they are? Well, ladies and gentlemen, whether you like them or not, you've probably heard that stigma that surrounds this Spurs squad, and it's surrounded them for a very long time. They are always the bridesmaids, they are never the brides, as they always find a way to cut themselves at their own knees. You know what I mean? Whether they start a season off great with winless runs, picking up Manager of the Month awards, then follows it with poor, horrendous form. You know what I mean? Whether they start games off well, take 2-0 leads, 3-0 leads, they always seem to have something, oh no, they went up Bolton. I say there's always that feeling, and normally I like to break down and I like to take part of those myths, and I say, oh, that's nonsense, that's just clickbait. You can't really do that for Spurs, because when you actually look at them, that's kind of built in almost to their DNA. And I genuinely feel like if you want a blunt, maybe harsh summary in comparison to anyone that will be able to pick up this video and really understand about the Spurs squad, is you could genuinely make an argument that they are the English equivalent of Hibs, as they always find a way to Spurs it, Hibs it, or bottle it. Now, of course, that's just a bit of fun. That's just a bit of banter. I'm not trying to minimalise the threat that the Spurs side actually has, because by God, trust me, there's a hell of a lot of threat and, honestly, scary matchups that we were going to be facing over the next 24 hours, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the Rangers end. But again, we're here to talk about everything about the squad, to update everyone who's watching. So we're going to talk about the good and the scary parts of the Spurs squad, but again, on equal of that, there is some really bad, and just like us so far this season, there's also that healthy dose of ugly sprinkled in. And I think when you draw a line in it like that, and you look at the good and you look at the bad in that Spurs side, that perfectly summarises the way that they've begun about their business, because they're so damn unpredictable. When they're good, they're absolutely frightening, and honestly, I'm going to get a sleepless night tonight. But when they're bad, it gives you a bit of encouragement, because it seems to just flip on randomly game upon game, and I cannot for anything tell you what type of Spurs squad we're going to be facing tomorrow. All I can say is when I see the starting 11, I'll be able to pick up a pencil with the arse cheeks. But I do want to dive more into that unpredictable nature of this Spurs squad. Just put all my cards on the table, then you can look at it and make up your own minds going in to the game of football, right? Because I can imagine there would have been a lot of Rangers fans that watched the most recent Spurs game, as it was on after us and everything like that on Sunday. It was against Chelsea. We were playing them on the Thursday. So I can imagine a lot of Rangers fans would have watched that 4-3 thriller versus Spurs, versus Chelsea, and been like, by God, this squad is mental to actually watch. And they are, right? You know what I mean? Spurs took a 2-0 lead in their most recent game versus Chelsea before losing 3 players to injury, conceding 4 goals, 2 of them being penalties, and Cole Palmer went ahead and chipped Big Frankenstein in the sticks for the second one, just humiliating him and taking his soul for his body, right? And you might look at that and say, by God, that was a mental game. But that is them, ladies and gentlemen. See, if you watched that game versus Chelsea, or even watched the highlights, that's them stretched over an entire season. And you know, we've picked a couple wee results, we've spoken about a couple wee things, but let's just put it all over the last couple of weeks, right? Let's actually look at it properly, right? They've scurried the likes of Man United 3-0 at Old Trafford. Were they able to carry on from that? No, they then go beat off the likes of Brighton 3-2 in a game that they were 2-0 up in again, just like Chelsea, ladies and gentlemen, before they bottled it in the second half and they conceded 3 goals again that time to Brighton. But you can look at all the results for that. We've already mentioned the 4-0 scanting of the likes of Man City that wasn't too long ago, but they also knocked Man City out of the cup as well, showing a pedigree in there. That is a great result. But they also gave Crystal Palace, who were winless up to that run, the first win of the season. We've already mentioned they gave Ipswich the first win of the season. One of the best performances for me so far, looking at a Spurs side coming in to this game all season long, was their absolutely brilliant performance versus Aston Villa. And Aston Villa squad, by the way, who's won again in the Champions League, who sit third in the Champions League group stage and doing well in the Premiership as well, with the demands of European football, right? They're a very good squad, Aston Villa. Well, Spurs went ahead and battered them 4-1. Ladies and gentlemen, battering a team that's sitting third in the Champions League group stage 4-1 with arguably their best 45 minutes. And honestly, a 45 minutes display that terrifies me as a Rangers fan, because the pace that they showed, the creativity they showed, the goals that they scored was ridiculous, and it will give me a sleepless night. But again, there's always that little sprinkling of hope that they give you, because even scudding the likes of Aston Villa saw them lose to the likes Bournemouth. Is up and down, big prize fighters, big game fighters if you want, but every single time they play a squad they should be beaten, they seem to take their eye off it. And I sit and look at this game of football, and you know what I mean, I take my heart off it. Spurs will be looking at this game as a game they should be winning. They've not been winning them all season, so you've got to take something into that as well. And again, I can't tell you what type of Spurs squad we're playing. They can be magnificent to watch for 45 minutes before being the worst team you've ever seen. And it's that constant cycle, game upon game upon game, going into this one. And a lot of them are blaming Ange for that. And I guess that's naturally where we're going to go next. Ange Postecoglou, you know what I mean? A guy we're not exactly the biggest fans of right here on the channel, because how well he done at Celtic and the way he built that Celtic squad, picked him up after us winning the league, just steamrolled us, steamrolled the league, trophy after trophy. It makes you ill to think about. But again, we know exactly how this Spurs team is going to play. Even without even hearing anything about them. As soon as we know Ange Postecoglou is the manager, we know they're going to be playing. They're going to be piling people forward. It's going to be attack, attack, attack. Get the ball forward. Get the ball going forward. We know that because that's the way that they're going to play. And that worked wonders again in Scottish football. But it's not been working wonders in English football because, again, the league's a hell of a lot more competitive and there are a lot of better teams doing south as well that's got a hell of a lot of money that they can sign a 40 million player. You know what I mean? Bournemouth signing 40 million. This team's, it's just mental the money that's doing there these days. But again, that brings different type of players, different challenges, and Ange's style, if you will, has been getting picked apart. Even when it works great, going 2-0 up, he will not change his mind or his philosophy at all. And that leaves gaps because you think about it, this team should arguably be the best counter-attacking squad when they're 2-0 up that you could ever imagine. They've got Son, they've got Johnson, they've got Werner, they've got Slanky up top, who's no the fastest player, but he's strong. You've got the likes of Kulinovsky in the middle, you've got the likes of Mathers that can pick passes and all that as well. There's really good players in there, so if you get a 2-0 lead, you've got to commit against that Spurs squad. They should pick you off, but they didn't even do that because Spurs just keep piling people forward and just gift chances to the opposition air and air and air again, and that's playing into the way that this season is unfolding, and it's playing into why a Spurs fan base can be cheering their team off at the park 4-0 scudding a Man City, then exactly 12 days later booing their team off the park versus Bournemouth and calling Ange fat and clueless. You know what I mean? There's clips are there. We've all seen them. They even showed them on Sky. That's the predictable, unpredictable nature that he brings. You know exactly how he's going to play. And if you get the rub of the green and it goes your way, you can rip this Spurs squad apart because just everybody's up front constantly, and that's why they've been so hit and miss as well. But that's enough talking about domestic football because again we've spoke a hell of a lot about teams that are FA in the league but can turn up and be dangerous in European football. Hell, it's usually us that we actually look at. So are Spurs any different? No. Ladies and gentlemen, they are the exact same in that unpredictable nature. As we've already mentioned at the start of today's video, they sit one place below us, having scored 2 less goals, and a certain Matt Hummels went ahead and solidified a 91st minute equaliser to allow us sit in that 8th spot in the Europa League, something again that I hope we're sitting in by the time the full whistle blows tomorrow. But their European form has been the exact same, you know what I mean? Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Started off with beating the likes of Karabag 3-0, they then narrowly beat Fenerbahce. They then went ahead and beat AZ Alkmaar before coming up against Galatasaray in a game they were deservedly beaten despite receiving a red card. And then again in the most recent game of football they went ahead and drew 2 each with Roma, where again Matty Hummel scored a big 91st minute equaliser. Shout out our boy, and it was great to see him recovering from the way that Alfredo Morelos threw him about a couple years ago. And I think that's pretty much the tale of the tape of this Spurs squad. We've spoken enough about their actual story, if you will. They come into this game needing to get a win, not only to get back in to the automatic qualifications, but also to keep the manager into the job, as the Spurs fans are voicing their opinion. They're unhappy, and again the speculation is building and building and building, and we usually know how that goes if it continues to build that way. So they need something coming into tomorrow, so hopefully they didn't actually get it. That would be very, very nice. The only thing we need to mention very briefly about the Spurs squad, by the way, they will be missing their captain by the name of Romero, who I think is their captain anyway, because sometimes Son, it's sometimes Mathers, and it's Romero's also had it in the centre-back spot. He is officially ruled out after going off the park versus Chelsea after about 10-15 minutes. The likes of Van de Ven, who is one of the quickest centre-backs in the world, I think, and one of the quickest centre-backs ever. Like, his sprint speed that's actually came up is a joke. I really hope he doesn't play the Mora because he's just a joke, man. Absolutely. Do you know how people were always so scared to run at Kyle Walker? Every Spurs game I watch, strikers will go, oh, it's him, I'm just going to jog back here. And obviously what we were going to have to do regarding our starting 11, the likes of Dessers versus Van de Ven, genuinely makes me sick. So hopefully he isn't rest, because he was a planned substitution. Apparently they've tried to limit the damage that's been done by that early substitution, so I don't know where he is. And Johnson also went off the park with apparent hamstring injury, which I think will be absolutely massive as well, because at least that there isn't a pace merchant, if you will, that won't be able to attack the massive gaps that we're going to have in our backline, and we'll be able to nip in there. You know what I mean? Big Jeff's quick enough anyway, so if there is rotations out there, I'm a lot happier because Johnson's actually been very on form and very dangerous. You know what I mean? Getting to the byline, putting balls into the mixer, and just his quick counter-attacking ability, so he's possibly a doubt as well. But you're still looking at the likes of Son versus Tavernier. You've got the likes of Madison in the middle. Kulinovsky, having been incredible this season. You've got big Solanke that'll be going up against big Soapy. They've still got ridiculous players that, again, when they turn it on, they've been fantastic. And the way that they've been rotating in European football, rotating Solanke, rotating Sonnet, rotating Kulinovsky, rotating Madison, now with the week that they're actually having and everything that's happening under the manager, I didn't see him rotating and putting the young laddies in, especially coming up the road to Rangers, where again there's a lot of history for Ange versus Rangers as well, but this man wants to keep his job in, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't think we're going to see a starting 11 like we saw versus Galatasaray, or we saw versus Venavaros, or anything like that. You know what I mean? I think we'll see their best players coming tomorrow, and hopefully that brings the bright lights to Rangers. You know what I mean? Because the tougher the challenge for Rangers, the better they get, and then on paper, the easier the challenge for Spurs, the worse that they play. So something has to give. But with that being said, that's us done and dusted with the Spurs side, so let's get to the Rangers side then, shall we? And again, it's very hard not to start off with the managerial conversation, because a lot has been talked about what Spurs need today to keep Ange in a job. Ange this, Ange, he needs this for his players, he needs his players to really step up for him. Well, we're in the exact same position, ladies and gentlemen. Not necessarily just this game, because honestly, and I might be completely out of turn here, but I think if you offered anybody a draw in this game and a win at the weekend, or even a loss versus Spurs and a win at the weekend, I think most people would go ahead and take it. I feel like that's it. So it's not really do or die in terms of the Spurs game, but it would be very naive to look at the upcoming week that we have with Spurs and then versus Celtic and try and talk about anything other than what is a massive audition for this man to keep his actual job, especially with almost the impending sort of circling of the new CEO starting on the Monday, you know what I mean? And did he start this Monday? Do you know what I mean? He started after Spurs and after Celtic, and he might have a big decision to make, because again, if you go ahead and lose both at these games, the fans won't be happy, despite the last two games being great, and I've honestly loved it, and I wish to God they gave me it earlier on at the start of the season, because I could have seen what we're doing. I could have done that. It took me needing to say, nah, I'm done with him and everything like that, to then finally be gotten back. He's like a toxic ex, ladies and gentlemen. You know what I said? I'm done with Phil. Then he starts giving me what I wanted, and I'm starting to see two up front, I'm starting to see the players, and I'm starting to get tricked into coming back, ladies and gentlemen. That's how I feel. But again, if we're being fair, the last two games have been games we should be winning. Now it's time to show his prowess in the next two games, especially the game on Sunday. But again, the foundation for what could be a successful Sunday could be put in place tomorrow with a very encouraging performance and not getting blown off the park, because it could go really wrong. You could get absolutely destroyed, the more and ripped to shreds by this Spurs squad, because they're more than capable of it, and go limping in to the weekend. Or maybe you can fight and show a wee bit of sun and come away with sun and take that into the weekend, saying if we could do it versus this Spurs squad, we can go and do it at the weekend. And that's what I feel like the mentality should be. It shouldn't be coming out in press conferences and going, well, they're financially out of our league and everything. I didn't need that weakness, you know what I mean? I called Gio out for that when he done it in the Champions League as well. I like Gerrard's almost mentality in the aspect, you know what I mean? Whenever he was led down these corridors, he says, they've got to come here and earn it, we'll give it a go. That's what I would rather hear. G up that. I didn't want excuses fired out so we could say, financially they're out the league, while we are sitting there boasting about beating the likes of Ross County, because it just seems a bit daft to me, and it starts digging your own trench, in my personal opinion. That's not the mentality I want to see for Phil. But again, I'm going to move away from it, because his press conferences are a bit of a roller coaster. On the park needs to be a performance, and I would love him to have all his tools available. But to be fair to him, in this upcoming game versus Spurs, he simply doesn't have them. And that is a major talking point, because going into the weekend, that's all we're going to be talking about. Is he going to be as brave as that? Are we going to do that versus Celtic? All that conversation is ripped apart, because we can't do that even if we wanted to versus Spurs, which I wouldn't recommend, by the way, as I don't think it's necessarily the best way to go about it. But at the same time, that took off the table, because the likes of Danilo and Hadji, who have been great over the last two games during the bright spark of the season, are ineligible to play in European football as they haven't been registered. Now, thankfully, Egeman is, of course, he scored versus the likes of Nice, etc., etc., right? So there is still the possibility of starting Egeman up top, but it does also open the door for Dessers to potentially return in there, and it also changes the midfield department as well, because do you start with Barami at the 10, or do you put Barami back out in the left and put Diamande back into the 10? The Hadji hole and the Danilo hole certainly leave something in the squad, but it's something that Big Phil has been pretty good at so far in Europe. You know, and give him his credit. You know, I mean, he's undefeated run. Some of the results he's got, he's been very good, and his tinkering and his manager will be pushed to the limit versus Spurs, because on paper it's obviously a terrible matchup. The actual shop, especially what we're missing. But again, you've got to be able to take something for the fact that they just pile everybody and just abandon everyone. You know, we are bad for leaving John Big Soapy and Leon Balogun back there. They didn't even leave one centre back sometimes. Everybody's in the opposition half. So for me, I look at this game as a potential counter-attacking display. That's what's hurt them versus Brighton. That's obviously what hurt them kind of in a game versus Chelsea, but Cole Palmer's just a wee bit of a joke, you know what I mean? And you look at some of the losses and the way, even the way Fenerbahce played, and some of the games that they were pushed to the limit, they were just constantly coated with pure raw pace on the counter-attack. It's just unfortunate we didn't really have any when you look at our squad. So I know the natural conversation will probably be Dessers coming in for Danilo and maybe swapping out Egeman and being a wee bit more defensive, because again, you're against a Spurs side. But that's almost playing in the hands, Spurs, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? You take the mere threat off the table, you're just going to get blown away from them. I do think you need to leave someday up there. It'd be the perfect game for the likes of Rabi Matondo. He can get a £15 million move based on the Mora's game if he was fit enough to actually play. The Corteses would have been great for this game and all that as well, but the only real pacey option we have got right now is Czerny-ish. He's alright at pace, but probably Egeman leading the line, and that brings up a potential risk for what is a massive game at the weekend. Do you start Egeman in here, then take him off for Dessers later on, and that probably would make more sense? Or do you flip it the other way and give him the last 15-20 minutes to run at this Spurs side? Again, it doesn't matter what the scoreline is or what time it is. They didn't shut up shop. They only play one way, so the chances for counter-attacking will be there. It's just if the players go ahead and actually take them. So a lot to think about in this upcoming game, and a lot to potentially risk or preserve going in to the weekend. But for me, I don't think you can rotate the starting 11 and just play this because nobody's bothered their arse, because not only do we need the money, that's been evidently clear by every single board member how important European qualification is for this club, but also too, you want to go into the weekend with something to pump your chest out to, because we've not been able to do it in old firm matches or anything like that. We've got to take some psychological edge from this game and take it into Sunday if everything went my way, but it usually doesn't do that, ladies and gentlemen. So it's a very interesting one for Phil. For me, I'd start Egeman, you know what I mean? I would try and get as much pace into that team as possible, and I would try and shut that down for there. But honestly, talking about matchups, as we mentioned previously, before we finish up the Rangers end and maybe get to some predictions and etc, etc, you look at the key matchups in this game. I know it's boring, but Son versus Tav is clearly a massive one, and the big conversation is, again, do you start Tav in this game or do you start Tav at the weekend? As silly as it is, I'd start Tav the Mora versus Son rather than on Sunday versus the likes of Maeda, because we've seen it no work versus that. So if we actually play it a wee bit smarter, maybe even go Tav and Sterling if we want, we could try and protect him out there. But Son's a ridiculous footballer. We saw him a couple of years ago at a friendly. Me and my father and all that was there. I think we posted some stuff up during that game as well and everything like that. It was a ridiculous game, and he scored a couple of goals with ease and that. So that's clearly a matchup. But it's the middle of the park that's really interesting me, because they've been rotating out Kulinovsky a lot, but he's the one. I know Madison will maybe have the captain's armband if Son's no playing or something like that. Madison, we've got history as well with obviously being at Aberdeen, scoring that ridiculous free kick, right? We all know James Madison's quality, and he'll be right up for it. He'll probably get booed out the park, but at the same time, it's Kulinovsky in the middle. Just watch his movement. He's shipped out in the wing a lot under the previous managers, but playing centrally, he's just involved in everything. Cuts into that left foot. You know what I mean? He's maybe like, with foot being disrespectful, a big step up in what Czerny brings us, being able to shift it onto that left. Kulinovsky's there, really good player. Wee Barron, if he is selected ahead of this game, needs to watch him every minute. I wouldn't even go anywhere else. I didn't want him running here. I didn't want him running there. I want him watching him I'm talking about Ander Herrera versus Hazard, Les. I'm talking about Park Ji-sung for Man United. That's what you need to shut off the park right there. And the other major key matchup isn't the striking position that we've spoke about, because again, there's no really key matchups there, because you'll just be allowed to run. If it's Ben Davies or Big Drac, or if it is Van de Ven, you will be given chances to run in behind this Spurs squad. It's the centre-back position for me. It's going to be John Soapy Suter versus Solanke. He's been very, very good the last 3 weeks. You could argue this game versus Spurs suits his traits better than what the weekend is going to be against Celtic, because he's going to be in the trenches versus Solanke. It's going to be a lot of wrestling in the box. It's going to be big headers there. Big Soapy needs to have his best performance. In fact, he needs to continue his performances of the last couple of weeks, but needs to watch the movement of Solanke. So that's it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Son Tav, it's Kulanovsky versus Conor Barron, and Soapy Suter versus Solanke. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. What about you? Let me know your thoughts and opinions, how you're feeling about this game, what you want for this game. Again, I'm not needing a win. Well, I'd like a win if you're offering me, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm not needing a win. I'm needing something that I can say, right, big game, we've turned up, we can take that in, let's go into the weekend with a bit of belief and confidence that we can turn up in a big game. Because when was the last time we turned up in a really, really big game like that? Now, I haven't done this before, but I have been getting a couple comments recently, and I did promise I would try it in my next preview video. So if you are still watching, let me know if you like these, or you want me just to remove this for the video. But someone said, when you're about to do your prediction video, maybe fire through the starting 11 you'd actually go for. And if you want me to do that, I'm going to do it very briefly as a trial period. If you like it, you can tell me in the comment section below and keep it. If you didn't like it, just tell me, and I'll cut it for the next videos. But obviously, Butland, I'd go Tavernier, Soapy, Balogun. I'd keep Big Jeff in there. He needs to simply play, in my opinion. Rotate him out for Ridvan all day. I'd go Barron, I'd go Raskin, I'd go Diamande just ahead of them, I'd go Barami out on the left, I'd go Cherny, and I'd go Igaman up top. I know it's not necessarily the sexiest thing, and it's not the stuff that I like to see in Scottish football, but when you look at it like that and what we need from this game of football and what we've actually got available, that's it. And then unleash the hounds, you know what I mean? If the likes of Matundos or the Corteses or any of these boys for the bench, anything with pace can come on, I'd love it, ladies and gentlemen. And if we were at full strength, it'd be Cortez out on the left, it'd be Rami in the 10, but we're kind of tied with our hands behind our back right now. But for me, the biggest call is Egeman. You risk him or no? I think you've got to, because you've got to keep this Spurs side honest at least, and have some pace running behind. And you never know, ladies and gentlemen, Dessers could have a game tomorrow if he starts, or when he comes on. But that's it, that's the starting 11 I think we're going to see, and that's what I'd go with based on what we've got available. What about you? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down there. And as always, I've been Siege over 92. I'm going to predict, I think the obvious one is going to actually be losing this game, maybe narrowly 2-1 or anything like that at Ibrox, which is obviously not having you like to say. If it was a couple of years ago, I'd really fancy their chances to even come ahead and win this game of football. But what they're needing and the way they're going to be coming out, the way they're going to be playing, he knows how to hurt us as well and really attack. It will be a difficult game, so I could see us narrowly losing this game. Hopefully no any worse than that. But you know, I'm forever a romantic when it comes to this channel, you know, and a romantic when it comes to my team, Rangers. So I'm going to go with a cheeky wee draw here, just something to build us up for that and take it in to the weekend. Score draw, ladies and gentlemen. What about you? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down there. And this time I'll end the video properly. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow late after the game. All the best and bye-bye.